Good evening, and welcome to this week's edition of The Kids These Days Are Listening to Such Loud Music, Turn That Bloody Music Down. I'm your presenter, Terence Fishlips, and in the studio today we have a very talented young man who I'm sure is going to go very far in the industry, and we're very privileged to have him here tonight. And his name is Clawham. Well, he isn't actually Clawham, but he goes by a few different names. When he was playing in some more, how should I put it, unorthodox outfits over the years, he came up with a few different names, but more recently as a banjo player, and I believe quite a loosely formed together blues band called Stress Pression, and I'm sure they'll go very far as well. And as a banjo player, a banjist, I think a banjoist, a banjologist, I suppose you could call them. Banjologist, Clawham McTwang. I suppose that's rather a play on word for the twangy sort of a sound that I suppose most people would associate with a banjo. So we're very, very privileged to have Mr. Ham in the studio with us this evening. How do you do, Mr. Ham? Well, pretty good. That's good. And I see you've come dressed for the occasion. It's very nice of you to actually put some shoes on to come into our studio. We're quite particular on footwear and gear. And well, thank you for joining us this evening. And I'm sure the listeners out there in Radio Land are going to be very pleased to hear this interview. It's been a long time coming. I've heard you've released 4 albums so far. Yeah, it sounds about right. Yes, and would you like to maybe tell us a little bit about some of the themes that come up in the album? Oh, just feeling sad, feeling angry. Sometimes, combination of both. Maybe feeling a little bit angry because you're feeling sad. Maybe feeling a little bit sad because you're feeling angry. Have you ever felt like that? You know what blues is about? Oh, you're actually asking me. I'm sorry. Yes, well, I suppose you don't have a name like Fishlips and don't know what it's like to feel sad. However, I can't really say that I've been... I've got a piece you've written here before you started out recording these albums with various other artists. You said, right here it says, feeling as if someone has kicked you in the knees from behind, and then you fall forwards on your knees to the point that your knees now hurt from the back and the front at the same time. Now, I must say that's never actually happened to me, but tell me how this kind of music was shaped for you. Did somebody actually ever do that to you? Yeah, that happened a few times. That's what inspired the trench blues, I suppose. I mean, being in a trench because you've been kicked in the knees so many times, it's bound to happen. We played with all the greats. Or you see, all the greats over the years we've played with. On the bass we had Tots, Flodiks, just an inspiration. It's such a shame that he buried himself. He didn't deliberately bury himself. I see you're. Is this an uncomfortable topic, perhaps, for you to talk about? No, I'm not fine to talk about it. I just, he was very fond of soil, and he lay down there one day, heavy sleeper, very heavy sleeper, and the soil was just around him, and then it rained. And it rained to a point where it just got muddy, and he didn't wake up. And then one day, the rain just kept coming, and just there's nothing left. You see, this was posthumous. The albums were posthumous. They were in memory of Tots because the trenches were filled generally with mud, and the trench blues. How would you feel? How would you feel if you lay down just in some soil, just for a nice sleep, and you get just buried in mud? They're still looking for him now. They don't exactly know where the trench is. or how deep it is, or even if any of that actually ever happened at all, or whether it's just, you know, musical folklore. But these are all very, very prevalent themes in the albums, you know. Yeah. Okay. Very good. Well, we've got a little bit ahead of ourselves in the interview here. I was going to start out with your name. I don't think we really need to ask you that now. How long have you been doing it? Doing what? Well, that's all I have here. What is your job? Well, I play trench blues mostly. The rest of the time I sort of think about blues, trench blues. You know, sometimes I feel a bit sad. I don't get paid for feeling sad. I don't even get paid for making music. But you know, it's something I've been up my sleeve, a feather in my cap. I actually had to stop wearing caps because, you know, they look a bit silly with feathers stuck in them. I mean, Terence, you don't really wear hats, do you? You wouldn't understand this. No, I suppose I wouldn't. No, I'll move on, actually. This seems to be, you know, I don't want to create a bone of contention in the studio. So how long have you been doing it? Doing what? It, you know, I suppose. How long have you been, you know, I suppose music. I suppose what you do is considered music to some our listeners out there probably think it's rather abstract. We have had a few calls come through our talkback section of the show and asking if what you do is considered music. Well, I've been playing bass since 2002. Well, I suppose that was an answer of sorts to the question. So you're not a bass player though. You clearly said before that you played banjo. No, I mean every bass can be a banjo if you play it properly. That's the thing about blues. How would you feel, Terence? I mean, think about this. This is something that you gotta consider really. How would you feel if you go to pick up your bass and it's not there? Someone's run off with it and they've left you with a banjo. How would you feel about that? I mean, it's starting to rain, your bass player's lost in some mud somewhere, you're standing outside the front of the gig, and you can't play bass because your bass is gone, someone's stolen it. The backup guy can't play bass because he's buried in some place. This is fundamental to our sound. Not quite, okay. Next question. How would you describe the main features of this position? Or the position? What position? Well, I suppose you're sitting in rather a funny position right now. I don't understand why your leg is sort of behind your head. Well, no, this is actually the long story, Terence. My foot is behind my head because I spent many years in India. And when I was in India, I was taught that the most comfortable thing to do is to sit in a very uncomfortable position. And it's a great inspiration if you want to feel sad. Okay, fair enough. So, you know, when you're talking about your actual physical position at the time, do you, as a paid musician, I mean, you said that you didn't get paid, but I'm sure you get fed sometimes when you go to. Do they give you soup at these gigs you play in town? Oh yes, when they run out of soup, they throw hot eggs at it. When they run out of eggs, they just throw sort of. They're either really hot eggs or they're really cold stones that they throw at us, but they always throw something. Okay, very good. So how many hours a week do you work? Oh, I mean, what are hours? Really? I mean, it's very much a question of what is time, and therefore, you know, what is language? What is sound? It's just waves. So I mean, how do you measure waves? Well, I'm sure you can measure those with quite a few things. I mean, scientific instruments, perhaps. Sound, the fact that you can actually hear me talking right now, that's rather a good way to know that, you know, you are actually hearing something. I mean, the way to measure sound is, you know, 4/4, 3/4. Do you know anything about time signatures? Maybe that's a way to record, you know, what you're hearing. Nah, time signatures were made up. Time signatures were invented in 1982 by a guy called Mr. Frank Time Signatures, and it was actually a big business for him because before that he was making Kodak cameras and it never took off. So, you know, it sort of had to go somewhere. So he thought, you know what, people just listen to songs and they assume A, B, C, D, A, B, C. That was just a beat. Back in my day when we started out in Stress Pression, this was just called a beat. So around Dilla time, things actually changed. That was in 1995. But, you know, between 1982 and 1995, time signatures were sort of like, do you remember Slinkies? Like, you could actually make Slinkies, but you didn't owe the guy who invented Slinkies money because he didn't patent it, because Mr. Time Signatures was actually a bit of an idiot. He was a genius, but also he was such a genius that he was just a total idiot. He didn't go to the patents office, the patent time lapsed. I don't know how much you know about music history, Terence, but this is, you know, it's pretty fundamental. Okay, very good. How flexible are the hours? Well, I suppose that really comes down to what you mean by flexible. What is flexible, you know? Is it a ruler? Is it a, you know, a squid? Squids. The thing is, what you don't realise, Terence, is you're a very esteemed, you know, interviewer. You're like Michael Parkinson or David Frost, but there's something, you know, something that I think you don't really learn a lot about in your industry is squid. And a squid can be quite flexible, but it can also be very rigid. And that's why when I was in primary school, the teacher used to I was always not very naughty because a lot of musicians, the teacher, I'd act up in class, so the teacher would just say, you, Ham, up the front of the classroom. And he would just go into his drawer and pull out this squid, and he would belt me with it. And he hit me 60 or 70 times. And I'll never forget it. And he said to me, at the end of class, he said to me, Claw, no matter what you do, never, ever do anything for any reason, just at all. And that just really, really stuck with me over these years. Okay, so, okay, great. So how would you rate your job satisfaction? Oh, the pay's okay. I get paid in cash, you know, promotions, better gigs. So they're actually paying you to play these gigs. No. They pay me with promotion opportunities, more recording sessions than producing, you know. I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm sorry. Could you maybe explain completely what you mean there? I don't actually understand anything that you said was pertinent at all. No, it's easy. All you got to do is create together to put on the best gig or do the best session we can, you know? It's really quite simple. I mean, networking is very important. I mean, have you ever heard of a guy called Kieran J. Callanan? No, I haven't. Yes, well, you know, well, I didn't either until I did. And then when I did find out, I sent him a message actually, because we're actually very good friends. And I mean, he's never met me before, but I sent him a message the other day and I was like, hey, Clint, like, when are you coming around to play some jams from, you know, there's this band called You and the Buzz, and I was sort of thinking that we should work together on a cover of Funk City. A great underground band. The guy who turned the easel pages, he sucked. Half the time he was pissed out of his mind. He couldn't stand up, he couldn't flip the pages. Sometimes he put it on the... Anyway, I'm getting off track here. So anyway, Killban was saying, look, I can't work with you on this music because I don't know you. You're just a guy who turned up talking about squid one night, and the whole thing just degraded from there. And he wanted to talk about milk. Now, I got no interest in milk. Terence, people come up to me and they're like, oh, Big M? Oh, no, I was all about Move. Back in the day, Move was the milk of choice. But, then they got too ahead of themselves. Who wants to drink milk that tastes like Maltesers when you can just buy some Maltesers and have a glass of milk with it? But where's the dignity gone out of music, Terence? That's what I want to know. Yes, okay. So how did you get started in the industry, in the music industry? So just say, before Time Signatures and Dilla and all of those things, before you got together with this lineup, the Stress Depression, how did you start in the industry? Oh, punk band at high school. Okay, can you tell me a little bit more about that? Nah, not really. It's not punk to talk about punk bands. If you're really in a punk band, no one should know who you are. Like, I'll tell you something, Johnny Rotten, that's not his real name. I guarantee that's not his actual name. Well, his name is actually, his real name is like, no, I think it's something like, Ripe. I think his name's Mr. Ripe. Cherry Ripe. That's his actual name. But everybody knows him as Johnny Rotten. But yeah, if you're in a punk band, you never talk about it because it's just not punk. What's the punkest thing in the world? Like somebody comes up to you and says, oh, are you Sid Vicious? And they just go, no. Or like, nah. Like, nah, I'm not Sid Vicious. That's punk. That's just the essence of punk. Okay, so what jobs would typically be next for someone in your position? Oh, definitely more gigs, more recording sessions, producing songs, respect, maybe an award. I like that when, fast food, that would be good. Just say Burger King comes up to you and says, Ham, I really loved the way you played that banjo on that track. You're an inspiration, and I think you're I think essentially you're a god. So, I think that would be nice, a little bit of recognition, a little bit of god status, maybe a few strings, maybe write a jingle. I think that would be quite nice. I'll tell you one thing that happened. I worked with Kool and the Gang once, probably 5 or 6 days, hours ago, and they were all about, look, you are the next Hendrix. Like I want to see you up there with Herbie Hancock, Bob Marley. You're going to be headlining with us soon. I was like, guys, really, I can't get into this with you because I want to record a jingle. I want to be known as the guy who made the jingle for Suzanne's. You remember Suzanne's? Yeah, I believe it was a ladies fashion shop clothing. Yeah. It's like, this goes with that at Suzanne's. Like, that's genius. Like, the guy who came up with that, I think it was James Brown or something, one of the greats. This goes with that. Why would you buy clothes from somewhere where things don't match? Like, I walk into a clothing store and I say, I want my socks to match my shoes, I want my shoes to match my skin tone, so it actually looks like I'm not wearing any shoes. That's genius. And it all comes down to the jingle. If you have a genius jingle, it inspires genius behavior from your customers. And that's what I'm all about. And you can really hear it. Okay, very good. So how important have people been in advancing your career? Can you give an example? Oh, well, I think, you know, while he was still with us, Cletus Pluckington definitely was a big influence on me. I remember we were sitting on, well, he didn't actually have a porch. He was a very sad man. He just had an old cinder block and a piece of old bone, and he would sit there and he actually didn't even have a banjo. He pretended he had one, and he would just sit there and just plug away and just be like, he looked at me in the eye and he said, ham. It was like that. He smoked so many cigarettes every day. You just couldn't hear him talk. It was like, ham, like that. It sounded like he was about to throw up, but he was actually saying, ham, like he was saying ham. And he said, the word that I can teach you about a banjo is you need to have a banjo. And that always stuck with me, like, it's really true. And he was obviously a big influence on me, God rest his soul. One day he just decided to end it just by, you know, instant noodles. He froze them up so they were all hard, and he tried to swallow them all at the same time, and he was skin and bone, and just poor guy, the carbohydrates just knocked him out. It wasn't pleasant. They buried him with all those carbohydrates, and he's still there now. I don't even know if he's dead, but they still buried him. It was blues, man. This is just how it worked. Yes, okay. Any other examples you can give me? Well, Pedro Dead Duck Shan Shan. Dead Duck was a big time kazoo player, big time. I don't know if you remember Kazoo Paloopa, the big festival for, you know, kazoo playing. So this was back in like 93, 94, 1894. He was very old. When he played on the album, he was about 116 when he was playing on the album, and he still gave it hell, you know. Quackfest, God. The thing is, before Quackfest, Dead Duck was actually called a live duck, but it's just, it took so much out. He couldn't tour like that anymore. He was about 95 at that point, I think. So anyway, he was a big inspiration on me. He just became obsessed with ducks after that. Dead ducks, live ducks, just, you know, halfway in between ducks. And yeah, he was a big influence on the whole blues scene, actually. I can't actually think of a single kazoo song that he didn't have a hand in actually, you know, coming up with something in there. Like, you know, but one day after we finished the album, he walked out the studio and flew south one winter forever. And it's the way he wanted to go. It's just, you know, I mean, where do you go from greatness? Just fade into a fuzz, a great fuzz. Very good. Okay, so I must admit, I've never actually heard of a kazoo festival before, but I think it's something a lot of our listeners might be, you know, very interested in finding out more about. Moving on, I think we'll have to move on. I'm sure there were a lot of very inspiring people to your career. Well, I must ask you the next question. What are the best and worst aspects of the job you do? I'd say the best aspect of it is I've seen a lot of really good, like, buckets and stuff like that. Like, have you ever really looked at a bucket as being a musical instrument? Because with trench blues, you have nothing. You can't just roll up to the Zildjian store and be like, I'll have one Zildjian, please, and then they give you your Zildjian and you start hitting it. It's not like that. I mean, when you're in the blues industry, all you have is an old can of hairspray and maybe, I don't know, a bobblehead or a twig. If you're lucky, you got a twig. The big guys have a twig. After 30 years of recording blues, you have a twig to show for it. But when we started out, man, we didn't have any of that. We had a punched face is what we had, and that's all. And I think you just gotta, like, that's the best aspect of this job. People hit ya. I'd say some of the worst things to happen to me was I was out drinking actually on the eve of recording our second Trench album, and we had a pocket full of harmonicas, and I was out with who was there? I think we had our accordion player Marcel the Squeak, he was there, and there was this one guy called Desmond, and he was an absolute lunatic. He used to like hitting sticks on things. So there's no Desmond, I think it was Tavistock Shrivington. He was very, very tall and very shiny. I don't know why, but he was always very shiny. I think he used to polish himself a lot. But anyway, we went out drinking one night, and he started hitting these harmonicas in the pockets, and God, with his sticks, and God, the explosion. All the windows in about 3 mile radius just blown out. And, you know, I think that's the worst thing about this industry is you have to do things that people listen to, and you have to make sounds, and it's very challenging to make sounds. Like, it's to do it professionally at this sort of volume, it's just really difficult. You can't go blowing up people's windows and stuff like that. I mean, you know, there's rules and regulations for a reason. So, I mean, I think that would be the best way to answer your question there, Terence. If you don't mind, I don't think it was a tough time. I don't really want to talk about it. Okay, very good. How much do new and emerging technologies affect your work? Oh, well, sometimes they come up with a new type of, instruments are something that we'll never get. It's like a pencil. I mean, have you ever seen a guitar glass tube? A guitar glass tube. It's like when you have the hand that you like make the up and down sounds. I mean, I use both hands for that, but some, less experienced, less good players use a hand and another hand to like flick the wires on the front of the instrument. You mean strings? You're referring to the strings of the guitar? Well, I mean, layman's terms, the strings, I suppose. So you start banging on the wires, and if you want to make it go like a whoop whoop sound, then you need a glass guitar tube, and you're sort of slinging on them with your plain number 10s, and you're just not going to make a convincing sound. You want the key to every successful artist who's ever made a song, like Earth, Wind and Fire, ZZ Top, Al Green, great, just the immortal Al Green, and Mr. Sticky Tape. You remember Mr. Sticky? I think Gaffer Sticky Tape. God, all of the greats. All of them were using instruments that aren't actually what you listen to. Like, for example, Jimi Hendrix, he used gaffer tape. That wasn't a guitar. He didn't actually play guitar. He played gaffer tape. But it was just the way he used, it's the way he used magic. I mean, that's how I can explain it. It must have been some sort of magic to create the sound. So I think new technologies and emerging technologies can only go so far, but you need to scale it back. Like a didgeridoo is a hollow stick, and a choir is just a bunch of people with voices. I mean, have you thought about that? How can you improve that? I mean, I don't think it's physically possible. I mean, the only way you can go from here is if you sort of, if you put Spanish castle magic. And that's another thing that could actually evolve things. I mean, I do say when I was playing banjo in the last album, I thought some Spanish castle magic might help us improve the sounds a bit. But the best I could come up with was Portuguese chicken shop mojo. Was the only thing I could come up with. And I think it really showed. It sort of weakened the tail end of my performance a little bit. But it is what it is. I suppose in music, people don't expect you to expect you to talk to them in a way that's like musical. Okay. I must admit I find a lot of your ramblings quite confusing. However, I will continue the interview just because my manager's staring at me. And yes, I think, how much longer do we have with this man? 20 minutes. I can't talk to him for 20 minutes. He's insane. Have you heard what he's saying? Okay. We're back. We are in the studio with Mr. Claw Ham McTwang from the very interesting Trench blues lineup called Stress Pression. So, Mr. Ham, are there any current issues that concern you in the industry? Oh man, where do I start? I mean, I think my main concern with the music industry, I mean, where's all the tang? That's what I want to know. People are very, like, all I want to do is drink orange juice and sit around in the studio and say, you know, oh, we've got to make the next dubstep song. Oh, we've got to, you know, why don't people dance to stuff? What, you know, what happened to ragtime, you know? People are jiggling around measuring tapes and saying, oh, we've got to make the new Busta Rhymes single. Like, there's a lot of things. The music is going in a way I don't really appreciate. I think people are too afraid to take a pair of boots and start stomping around in the ground and be like, that's what we need in this song. I mean, our bucket player, Man Person, he was, well, Hole. In the industry we call him Hole. So Man Hole Person. So we go into the studio one day. Man's already there. And he's sitting there with his bucket, and he's like, man, this bucket's so heavy. Oh, and I was like, tip the water out of the bucket. And he was like, but I like the sound and go, and you tap it on the side. And I was like, just empty out the water, and he tipped it out. And he just started drumming on it, and it just, the sound we were blown away. We were like, that's going in the album. That's going in all the albums. So what happened is he leaves his bucket in there, and then who else but, you know, we leave the studio, we come back in, and Fred again had obviously thought this was, you know, it was some sort of Euro power apparatus, and he'd gone and thrown in as well. Like, I think he was eating like escargot. He's a very fancy guy, and he gone flicked the eggshells in there. And when Man came back into the studio, he's just looking in the bucket. He's like, man, somebody used my bucket as a snail shell trash can. He's like, this isn't a trash can, it's a bucket. And I think it's just the lack of understanding of the difference between a garbage bin and a bucket. You know, just that sort of ignorance, you know. And I think that carries on into, you know, how a blues man can go about his day when people's filling his bucket with just shells. Like, it's, you know, this isn't the seashore. You're going to be picking up shells. It was a very, very hard time. But I mean, the only positive that came out of it was, you know, Man was so depressed after that, man. The way he drummed on that, you can really hear it in the bucket. He looked in the mirror and he was like, man, I know pain now. Just his hands, just the way they hit that bucket, and it was a plastic bucket as well. That's the worst thing about it. You know, he has metal buckets. I don't think you'll ever find anybody who knows more about buckets than him. Sometimes he puts nuts and bolts in there. He can get all sorts of sounds. He's a genius. I think probably the other thing that I think concerns me about the industry is, I mean, a lot of studios are very flammable. I mean, nobody goes into the recording studio thinking, I might catch fire in here today. Because I like to walk around in a lot of very flammable clothes. Like, I like to walk around in big furry, feathery boas and stuff. It's just the blues man way of life. I'm parading around in my long feathered hats, and, you know, sometimes for fun, I just like to pour oil all over myself, or vodka, or petrol sometimes. I just like to have a little bit of a splash. I like to just, you know. And it really concerns me that things can just catch fire. And I think that's a very real threat to anybody in the music industry. I mean, Pepsi, a lot of sugar, very bad for you. You know, that's another thing. I'm going to have to stop you there, actually, because you're not really making it. You're just rambling at this point. My next question: did you undertake any training or courses for? Oh my God! Did you undertake any training or courses for your job? And can you recommend any for people starting in this business? Well, I think the best training a man can get in blues is just to be red. Just be red to the point where you just turn blue. I have no idea what you're talking about. Well, it's really quite easy. Like, what's the opposite of blue? Probably lots of things. No, Terence, I don't know how much you know about chromography, which is the study of colour. But in music, it's very important to know about colours. Like, something that's blue, the opposite is red. So if you hold your breath for long enough, you'll turn red, but then you'll turn blue. You get it? That's what paint is all about. So red, it turns to purple. And how do you do that? You add blue. So I think, you know, it's a very common lesson that I would recommend for anybody starting out in the music industry. I mean, other than that, maybe music cert 3 or 4 at TAFE, maybe bass lessons for a year. Okay. So the second part of that actually made quite a lot of sense, because if you want to get a head start in the music industry, surely some sort of tertiary qualification would be very important. Well, yeah, but you just don't be green. That's my advice for you. Don't be green. Okay, so you don't like the colour green. It does it sounds like you're an absolute maniac, no offense, but I'm sure our listeners here would... we actually have a call coming in from somebody. This is... Hello, you're on the air now talking with Mr. Clawham McTwang.
Yes, my name's Doris McMillicuddy.
Yes, hello Doris. Do you have any message for Mr. McTwang?
Yeah, I want to tell him you know I hate the colour green as well.
No, okay. Very good, Doris. I'm glad that you're on our side. We had a McGillicuddy before, the Slasher McGillicuddy Crooner Gang. In one, I think it was One Gift.
Yes, I know, those are all my grandsons.
Oh, very good. What a small world. Okay. Oh, sorry. I should probably get that. No, I'm still... Hello? No, I'm still at work. I'm talking to this idiot from the blues band. Yes, I'll call you back. Yeah. Sorry, viewers, listeners, I should say. I had to let Doris go there because she's just as insane as Mr. Ham here. Mr. Ham, those are all of the... no, sorry, there is one more question I have here for you. Did you find this industry difficult to navigate? Yes, very. Do you have anything else to add there? No, just very difficult to navigate. Okay, very good. I think we should... this interview has gone long enough. I'd like to thank you, Mr. Ham McTwang, the banjolist from the Trench Blues band Stress Pression. And next time, I'm sure we'll be getting a few other guests from... Oh no, they're all from the same band. Seamus Fiddly D. Oh god. We're gonna have to get... They're probably gonna be just as deranged as this one. Do we have to talk to him? Okay. Well, thank you, listeners. You will be hearing from, I'm sure, Mr. McTwang in his next effort. Thank you for coming on the show and spending your time and imparting your indefatigable logic and wisdom for all our listeners here. Oh, anytime. I'll come back anytime. I can just stay here if you want. Yes. Why don't you do that? Why don't you just stay here all night? We'll close the studio down. You can hang around in here. Okay, until next time, listeners, we will see you on whatever the kids are doing now. Turn down the bloody volume or something like that. I quit. I don't want to do this job anymore. I used to work for BBC Radio.